Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of The Force with Matt and Major. I am Major, and I have with me, as a surprise, Matt. So we are here with another episode. We're going to be talking about the last week in the Skyforce, and they played 3 games since we last recorded, so we're going to go over each game. Matt, what do you want to start off with?
Let's start with their first game against the Hustle. I mean, it wasn't the most entertaining game from a score perspective, but may as well start there first.
Yeah, I mean, it was not a close game. It was
No.
a 14-point win by the Skyforce, 121 to 107. It never really felt like in jeopardy, at least in my opinion. I thought the Skyforce just, did what they were supposed to do when you're playing a team that's 13 and 18 and 6 and 10 at home. That's pretty bad when you have a losing record at home. So it was not a surprise here. The first person that's going to jump off to me is going to be my guy, Josh Christopher. 40 points, 10 rebounds, 3 assists, 14 of 22 from the field, 4 of 9 from 3, and 4 of 4 from the free throw line. I keep preaching it. He's just a flat out bucket getter, man. And when he's cooking, similar to like Alondis Williams, like when he's just hitting his shots, no one can do anything to stop him. And that was just one of those games where his natural talent just kind of showed. I mentioned it before, but he was a former first-round draft pick in the NBA, so he has that talent there, and it's just about unlocking it. And that certainly was the game, his best game with the Skyforce, for sure. He was the go-to guy. He was doing absolutely anything. And I mean, an interesting thing is Alondis Williams had 9 shots in 38 minutes. That's kind of when you know other people have it going, when Alondis is willing to take that step back, and he had that 8 assists, so he was more facilitating. When you have a guy that can be a bucket getter like Alondis, realizing, hey, these other guys have it going and dishing it out, that's also an indication of like how great Josh Christopher was playing, that they were running through him and going to him. So I thought Josh Christopher was just someone that jumped off the page the most, and it was kind of how he was doing. He was doing it in all facets of the game, attacking the rim hard, pulling up for mid-range, and hitting his threes at a high clip. So I just thought, just incredible game from Josh Christopher. And obviously, if we see that a little bit more and then pair it maybe with like an Alondis Williams game that he had also this week that we'll get to a little bit later, they would just be absolutely unstoppable in the playoffs that are coming up. What about you, Matt? What stood out to you?
Just bouncing off what you said with Josh Christopher, I thought he was in rhythm. Like, I think that's like the most important part. I think he was aggressive at all 3 levels. He kind of set the tone for the game. The Skyforce in general kind of set the tone, but he was a big part of it because, I mean, they outscored him 34-18 in the first quarter, and Hustle only shot like 6 of 26. It was some like really bad percentage, and I thought him, Caleb Daniels, like those 2 guys really set the tone. And again, the most important part about Christopher is like he looked like he was in like flow, like he was catching in rhythm, he was shooting in rhythm, like he wasn't hesitating or he wasn't pausing. And I think that's something like when you watch basketball, especially at a professional level, like that's something you want to see from your guys, and you don't want to see them hesitate. You don't want to see them overthink, because at the pace this game is at, you're forced to overthink sometimes, or you're forced to think a lot about everything that's moving, because everything's moving so fast. And he wasn't doing that this game. The guy that stuck out to me was Orlando Robinson. And it was also very funny. I mean, he finished with 22 and 12 of 15 from the floor. He had 2 assists, a steal. But the thing that was also really funny is just like the discrepancy of competition between the NBA and the G League, because shout out to the Memphis Hustle broadcasters. But I want to say it was like sometime toward the second or the third quarter. It was around that time. And they were just like befuddled why Orlando Robinson was in the G League. They're like, what's the Heat doing sending him to the G League? Like, this guy's dominating. Like why is he even here? Like, they should get him as far away as possible. I just thought it was a really funny moment, because like when we talk about Orlando Robinson at the NBA level, it's definitely not that. But I thought he was really good. Like, I thought, especially as that game went on, I mean, obviously they were doubling him a lot more. than they were at the start. And I thought he was doing a really good job. Like, he only finished with, again, a couple of assists, but I still thought like him kicking out on some of these like post entries and him keeping the ball moving as a connector, as well as finishing around the rim and establishing his post position as well as he was. I thought he did a really good job. I mean, Teo Maladon, 10 rebounds, 9 assists. Like, that's something you want to see, even though he only had 4 shots off the bench. Olin Carter was 8 of 15 from the floor. Like, there was an all-around impact from these guys. But Orlando Robinson stuck out to me, especially because it's just like, it feels like when you're watching these games, like obviously he's going at 100%, but it doesn't look like it because it's just so good relative to these other guys. Because it looked like he was going to like 70, 80% at certain points, and he was just finishing effortlessly, and it really buoyed the rest of the offense. So he was the guy that stood up most to me.
Yeah, and I love what you said about how the announcers are talking, like, what is he doing, in the G League? And then he plays in the NBA, and, it's a different animal, right? Still obviously a really good player. But then people are like, what is Orlando Robinson doing, like, on the court right now? He looks a little lost at times because he's getting used to it. And that's no slight to Orlando Robinson. He's greatly improved, in my opinion, for his NBA play. And it's because of those reps with the Skyforce. Every time he goes down to the Skyforce and comes back, he plays a lot better in the NBA. He learns a little bit more. And every time he gets another opportunity to play in the NBA, he learns, okay, in the G League, I can get away with this. In the NBA, I can't. And that's kind of the difference. But I try to tell people all the time, you got to see Orlando Robinson play in the G League. It's a cheat code. He looks like prime Will out there compared to these people. It's insane. I love Orlando Robinson. I really think he does have a chance to be a good rotation backup center in the NBA, which would be incredible. Every guy's trying to carve out a role in the NBA, and I think he has one right there, right for the taking. And I do like what you said about Olin Carter. I was going to mention him as well. 8 of 15 from the field, 4 of 9 from the 3-point line, 5 rebounds. He was a plus 20 on the plus minus. And single game plus minus isn't the greatest stat, but anytime you get plus 20, that's pretty significant. Second highest on the team behind the one and only Orlando Robinson. So he was doing a lot of little things as well and hitting his shots, and it just makes it really hard to defend and really nothing the Memphis Hustle could do. And I just want to point out their 2-point defense was really good. When you look that the Hustle were shooting 40% from 3, you wouldn't expect them to only score 107 points. But anything inside the 3-point line was, having great defense, good contest. And then they're finishing it off with rebounding. And we talked about the difference in rebounding and how you end possessions. They had 42 defensive rebounds, which was a lot, obviously. Now, I will say the Memphis Hustle were attacking the rim, and, they had 101 shots. So that's an astronomical amount of shots. And they did have 15 offensive rebounds. You would like that to be a little bit lower. But, anytime there's 101 shots, there's going to be some offensive rebounds. So can't nitpick that too much. Now, as for the next game, it was a 103-112 win against the Cleveland Charge. And once again, anytime you play a team that's 13-18, you got to take that dub, and that's exactly what the Skyforce did. But the Charge has some good players with Sharif Cooper and Pete Nance, and just guys that can on any given night beat you, right? And so I thought it was a good, job of the Skyforce taking care of business like they should, not messing around. They took a lead at the end of the first quarter, and they pretty much just kept going from there. They lost it for a little bit, and then in that fourth quarter is where they showed their dominance, winning that fourth quarter 30-16, which is just wild right there. So what stood out to you in that game?
I want to talk about Malik Williams for a bit, because I thought, especially in that fourth quarter when they outscored them, nearly doubled their score. The Charge were 4 of 20. And I think they were 2 of 7 in the paint. Like Like the majority of their shot, or not the majority of their shot, but like a good amount of their shots were coming in at the rim. Malik Williams had 3 blocks. And I thought him detracting and swaying shots and blocking shots and his rim protection was really crucial down the stretch, especially like when they were, I think it was at one point late in the third quarter, they were down by as much as 7. I think they cut that a little bit before the fourth quarter, but I thought the momentum kind of swung with those possessions. And then obviously like, I like Olin Carter, like all those guys, like they produced really well. And like that led to easy offense. But I thought Malik Williams, he didn't obviously the statistically like throughout the entire game. 22 points, 9 rebounds isn't nothing to scoff at, but I thought his impact defensively was really important down the stretch of that game. And it was a big reason why they were able to get that lead and hold on to it as the time ticked off.
Yeah, and a lot of times players' impact doesn't always come across in a stat line. And I do agree with you. Malik Williams was even better than the stats show that game. Even though, like you said, nothing to scoff at, he still had a really good game on the stat sheet. But sometimes it's just a little bit farther. You don't see all the deterred shots and the altered shots that you might not get a piece of, but forces a miss there. I want to talk about Caleb Daniels. He had 4 offensive rebounds that game. And in a game where, like you said, the fourth quarter was just dominant, but there were times where, they entered it with a deficit. So there were times where seemed like it was going to be a lot closer game. And getting 4 offensive rebounds is absolutely massive in a game like that, where every possession matters and you're trying to build a little quick comeback there because you let up a run in the third quarter. So he was massive on rebounding, and we've talked about how important rebounding is numerous times, and he finished with 12. I love when a guard rebounds. I think that shows a lot of effort. And that's one thing you can always control. You can't control if your shot's falling. There's going to be off nights. You can't control if, you're getting called for ticky-tack fouls. You can't control a lot of stuff, but you can always control your effort. And that is, no matter how good your actual play is, your effort should always be there. And 4 offensive rebounds for a guard is like a perfect example. And then 12 rebounds overall is a perfect example of, that effort is there. And I want to shout out Manny Camper as well with those 12 boards as well. They were both the highest on the team. Manny Camper, similar to Malik Williams, does a lot of stuff that doesn't show up in the stat sheet. He's kind of like that heart and soul on the defensive end. And if y'all have listened to any of the previous episodes, the Skyforce at times have a lot of trouble on the defensive end, and they need that heart and soul. And I thought Manny, once again, was a big reason why that fourth quarter was so dominant, and why that defense ended up correcting itself. Another guy that did really well was, once again, Josh Christopher. He had 2 good games back-to-back. 22 points, 3 rebounds, 4 assists, 3 steals, and a block. So stuffing this stat sheet and doing exactly what he needed to do, what the Skyforce needed from him as well. Olin Carter, again, 7 of 16 from the field, 6 of 11 from the 3-point line, 7 rebounds, 4 assists, 1 steal, 1 block. So multiple guys contributing. And a guy we talked about just last episode about elevating his game, Isaiah Moore. He 6 of 7 from the field, 4 rebounds, 1 assist, 1 steal, 1 block, 12 points. So you just keep seeing the steals, blocks, rebounds, everyone doing a little bit of everything. It takes a team to win in this league, and they are finding a way to be more balanced and not relying on just one person. Now, obviously, like we just talked about with Josh Christopher in his 40-point game, that is a little bit different. He has it going. He's making his shots. But you see too many times people relying on one player. And so when they're not making their shots, they still just keep only going to that player because that's all what they know to do. But the Skyforce understand when, okay, let's ride the hot hand, or, hey, there's several of us that are making a big impact, and let's feed everyone.
No, I'm 100% with you there. And we didn't even mention Alondas. He had 11 assists, 3 steals, and 2 blocks that game. And so like that, again, that all around impact. Yeah, he's not shooting the ball a lot. He only had 11 shots that game. Five makes, 3 of 8 from deep, finished with 13 points, but the all around impact was there for him. Just from like, I'm gonna set you guys up a little bit. I'm gonna connect. I'm gonna throw you that extra pass when you need it to. Like I'm initiating offense. Like just little stuff like that is stuff that matters. And so like all of those guys were super impactful, and you're completely on it with like it takes a team to win. And Alondas contributed to that. Olin Carter contributed to that. Caleb Daniels, Malik Williams, Josh Christopher contributed to that. All those guys scored in double figures. Isaiah Moore contributed to that. Manny Camper with the rebounds contributed to that. Like all 7 of those guys really, and then they got some spot minutes from Teo and James Caron Butler Jr. But like other than that, it was just such an all-around team effort in a game that like, yeah, it was a game against an inferior team that you needed to beat to at least like maintain your top 2 standing in the West. And that's exactly what they did in this game, which was the first of a back-to-back against the same team, despite Sharif going off for 30, despite Pete Nance doing what Pete Nance does, Zaire Smith, like guys who have, I mean, maybe they may not all be like NBA caliber guys, but like names that you probably know. And the Skyforce with these 7 guys took care of business in different facets.
Yeah, to me, this is one of those games that makes you feel good about the playoffs, right? They didn't need one guy to drop 40 to win. They found a way to win as a team, and I love when I see the box score and watching the game, and there's several guys with 20 points. I mean, we had 3 players above 20 points, and like you said, we had 6 players in double digits, and then Manny Camper only had 3 points, but he had 12 rebounds, 2 assists, 2 steals, 1 block. Like, there's just so many guys contributing, and that is when you see a really good team, right? And it's not like they don't have the guys that can take over. I've mentioned it twice now. We just talked about Josh Christopher. This next game against the Charge, and I'll segue into it, they needed, a big game from, man, Alondas Williams, the new two-way. And this is what he's capable of. He goes from 2 games of being a facilitator and not many shots to then just absolutely dominant 45-point game, 6 rebounds, 9 assists, 16 of 23 from the field, 6 of 11 from the 3-point line, and 5 of 5 on free throws. Just flat out dominant, understanding in this game, hey, I need to put, the team on my back, and I need to lead them to a victory by scoring. And it's not like he was just like, oh, I'm scoring. I'm not going to, I'm still going to pass the ball. I'm still going to help out in rebounds. Just an absolute dominant game from Alondas. So is Alondas the only player that stood out to you? Or is there anyone else? What do you want to say about this game, Matt?
I mean, he's obviously the biggest name on the Skyforce that I want to point out. Again, like I thought Sharif just had a really good 2 days. Like I felt like he was getting to the rim. He was the one guy who was penetrating the Skyforce's defense. Dexter Dennis was good in this game. Pete Nance wasn't as good, at least from the scoring perspective, but he still had 15 rebounds, 8 assists. Like I thought all 3 of those guys on the Cleveland Charge were really good, but Alondas was definitely the guy that stood out to me. But the most important play of the game came on an Alondas Williams pass. And like he had a couple of drives late in that game where he was he had one in transition, and this is how you leverage your slashing ability into playmaking. He was able to get. I mean, he. I don't think he generated a paint touch. I'm trying to remember the play like off the top of my head. He didn't generate a paint touch, but he was driving against Pete Nance, who switched onto him after a dribble handoff, and then he kicks it to Olin Carter in the corner for 3. And so, like again, Alondas was a really good passer in college. He's shown to be a really good passer in these first couple of seasons in his career. In addition to what he can do from a scoring perspective, like he started out on a heater. He hit. I think he went 5 of 8 in the first quarter. He had 14 points, 3 threes. He had a couple of threes in the second half. But the thing that I love about Alondas, and I think you've echoed this point on Twitter before, like he's best when he's getting to the rim and he's not settling. And late, even when it was semi-transition or in the half court, like he was getting to the rim. And when he tried to get to the rim that last possession, well, guess what? There was an extra defender that came over and helped. He found the open man in the corner, kicked it to him, 3, boom, game winner. And it was just like, that's how you leverage your slashing ability, your rim pressure. When the defense is when the defense is forced to rotate and help, and you're able to find that open man in time for an in rhythm three. Like that was an in rhythm three for Olin Carter, who only had 2 threes that game. And so I don't know. It's just like stuff like that, like stuff that you want to see from a guy like Alondes Williams at this level, even though he did have 45 points and he was spectacular the entire game. He had 9 assists, like that also like matters a lot. He had a third of their assists, 9 of their 27 assists were just from him alone. And that just shows you what he can do with the ball in his hands, regardless if he's scoring, regardless if he's playmaking, whatever the case is. A couple other guys I want to talk about: Josh Christopher, 15 points, 4 rebounds, 4 assists, 1 steal on 5 of 14 shooting. Olin Carter had 12 points, 5 of 11 shooting, 2 of 7 from deep, 4 assists. A couple guys off the bench in double figures: Isaiah Moore and Brandon McCoy. McCoy usually gets more run without Orlando Robinson, but this was one of I think probably his best game of the week. On 5 of 6 shooting, he had 4 assists, 2 rebounds. Isaiah Moore had 6 rebounds, a block shot with 10 points on 4 of 6 shooting. Like just guys who can contribute. But obviously, the story of the game was Alondes Williams. And again, the most important play of the game, despite having 45, was a pass to the corner for the win.
Yeah, and like Olin Carter had a great week. Like he did not shoot well from 3 this game, 2 of 7 and 1 of 6 when he took the most important shot of the game. And man, that's what shooters do though. It doesn't matter if you're 1 of 6, you believe you're going 2 of 7. And that is exactly what he did. He was ready. And I texted Matt, after that, I said, I'm taking credit for this because I talked to Olin, before the game and it's just talking to him. And one of the things we actually talked about was like, he joined the team in the middle of the season, right? And like, how is he staying ready? How is he, working behind the scenes that he's made such an impact middle season acquisition and now becoming one of the more important players. And he's putting in the work behind the scenes. He's staying ready. And he doesn't matter if he's having a bad game or not. He knows his job and he knows that the thing he's best at is shooting and he's never going to lose confidence in that. But one thing I want to highlight is like his 4 assists, like in his 5 of 11 from the field. If you're a shooter and you're shooting 2 of 7 from 3 and you still find a way to almost shoot 50% from the field, like you are understanding you can leverage your shooting into better attempts. Perfect example that a lot of our listeners might not, Duncan Robinson on the Miami Heat. He now leverages his shooting into easier 2-point shots. So even now when he's not hitting his threes, he can still find ways to score. And Olin Carter was doing just that. And it's a testament to the work he's been putting in behind the scenes. Everyone likes to talk about the results and their pretty plays and dropping 45 like Alondes Williams. That doesn't happen if people don't put in the work with the coaching staff and, learn from their poor shooting games and how to improve. So I just love talking about how guys have improved over the season. And when you can see that work putting in things that they were specifically working on, like not just being a shooter and being more versatile. And then we're talking about that. And the most important thing he did was be a shooter and hit a shot. So it's like comes full circle, right? He might not be on the court at that time if he didn't improve other aspects of his game. So I always think that's real neat. And I always like pointing that out of you have to find ways to be a more versatile player. And Olin Carter did that. And that can even help your best attribute. Like in this case, he was still on the court despite a bad 3-point shooting day because he was setting up teammates and getting, easier shots in the 2-point territory. And Alondes Williams, I just love how he's learned to play off his scoring ability to set up teammates. And I feel like he's improved his passing as well to where he's not taking as many risky passes and he's setting up guys in their shooting pockets for easy shots. It's little things like that that make a big difference, and you're seeing kind of why Alondes Williams started out, just on a standard G League contract and is now on a two-way with the Miami Heat. It's those little things that we see. Not only is he capable of dropping 45 or 55 like he did earlier in the year, he knows how to leverage that to help teammates, and he trusts his teammates in some of the biggest moments of the game. So, Matt, we were talking about the standings before here. Let's just, before we close, give a quick rundown of the standings.
So right now, really the top two seeds in the Western Conference is Stockton and Sioux Falls. Stockton's 22-9 right now. Sioux Falls is 22-10. Stockton plays tonight. We're recording this on Tuesday, March 26th. They play tonight. They play the Memphis Hustle tonight. And so assuming they win that game, there'd be a game up on Sioux Falls. But coincidentally, Sioux Falls plays Stockton twice this upcoming weekend. And Sioux Falls could secure that number one spot by winning both those games. And so it's just something to look out for, just a little tidbit. If obviously, I believe I want to. I'm not 100% certain how the tiebreakers work. So, like, assuming the Memphis Hustle do win this game tonight, they would be tied in the standings. I'm not sure who that tiebreaker would go to off the top of my head, but the Sioux Falls Skyforce could have an opportunity to clinch that one spot this weekend, and the top two teams in each conference receive a bye. And so I think it feels all but certain that they will clinch those two byes. Both teams will clinch those two byes, but it's just a matter of just seeding from like a matchup perspective. I know if the Skyforce do get that number two spot and Rio Grande secures that 3 spot, we could see a rematch of the Western Conference finals from last year, even though Rio Grande did beat them by 5. Right? Could be a little rematch on our hands, but we'll tack that once it comes. The regular season does end the 30th, and so this is the last weekend of regular season games before the playoffs next week. And it's not like a 7-game series. I think it's a 1-game winner take all for those first for the first round quarterfinals and the finals, and then the G League finals is a best of 3. But man, I'm looking forward to this. But
yeah, we should be treated to some great basketball in those last 2 games, fighting for the 1 seed. Like you said, the top 2 seeds are pretty much already locked up, but it could get real interesting, last game of the season down for the 1 seed. I would absolutely love that. I think that would be really entertaining and just treat us to some great, Skyforce basketball. And that's what we're here to see. We're here to watch them develop. We're here to watch good basketball, and that's what the Skyforce give us. We're blessed to be able to talk about and cover a really good G League team with a lot of talent. We try to highlight everyone we can, so we throw out as many names as possible. And we're not only talking about Alondes Williams and Jamal Cain and Cole Swider when they're with the team, or Orlando Robinson. We're talking about everyone, because it takes a team to win a championship. And I believe the Skyforce have a team that can win a championship. And so hopefully, in a couple of weeks, we get to talk about G League champion Skyforce and how they did it and talk about that. So with that, that is going to be all we have today. Once again, my name is Major, and with me, I have Matt. And so thank you all for listening. You all have a good day. Let's go Skyforce.